بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is the second video in a series of videos that the scholars would like to put out and produce. In today's discussion, we want to speak about the imagery of the Ahlul Bayt. It is a question that has come up from several brothers and sisters, that what is the status of the paintings or the photos that are produced showing the faces and images of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam. Quite often when someone goes on ziyarah, they will see posters portraying Imam Ali or the Prophet or Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam. And also in some of the films we find imagery of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam. So this is a question that has rose up in the minds, especially for some individuals who have embraced Islam. They were once Christian before, and of course there's a lot of imagery in Christianity of Jesus, and they kind of moved away from those imagery, and embraced the faith, Islam, and have come upon the path of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam. And once again, they were faced with the images of sacred individuals, holy individuals. So what is the status of these images? And noted that images are a very powerful message. Quite often when we see an image of something, it sticks in mind. And particularly as well during the era of racial justice, quite often people ask about the ethnicity of the Imams and what they actually look like, and whether the paintings and the photos, they are kind of accurate or authentic, or do they go off from what is the description of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam. Likewise, what are the rulings on this that our Maraja have given? So I want to speak about those points as points of reflection. So those would be kind of 3 points of reflection. But I want to start with an introduction before we go into the reflection about the status of the imagery of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam. And this introduction, it is perhaps the place that we should be at whenever we are dealing with any of the images or things about the Ahlul Bayt, or even just with creating a connection among ourselves. And that is to understand that whatever exists in this world is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning we should look at those things, and however it is, its shape, its fashion, its color, its ethnicity, if we're talking about human beings, and understand that that is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has stated in Surah Rum, verse 22. So that is chapter 30 of the Quran, verse 22. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ خَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاخْتِلَافُ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ وَأَلْوَانِكُمْ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْعَالِمِينَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that among His signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth. So, and this is one of the things that we are very clear about as believers, that when we look at the heavens, we look at the skies, we look at the multiple layers of the sky and the atmosphere, this is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we look at the earth and whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created in this earth that we use to survive and live, this is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, in verse 22, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He goes further and He says, وَاخْتِلَافِ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ, the differences in your tongue, meaning the differences in your language. We speak very different languages, and this is from among the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even the languages that, unfortunately, nowadays you may find languages are dying off. One person or two people speaks a particular language, often a far-off village. Many linguists are even striving to try to save those languages. But language in its variance and its diversity is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wal alwanikum, likewise the different colors and the different complexions of mankind and all that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The color of a red apple, a green apple, an orange, or a blood red orange, the orange that has a tint of redness in it. All of these are signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether a person is black, white, brown, whether a person is yellow, whether a person is an albino, all of these variants in colors as well is from the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is particularly a sign, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْعَالِمِينَ. Those individuals who have been given knowledge and understanding, meaning human beings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us, as He says in the Quran, He has taught us what we knew not. And so for anyone and any of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation who has been given the faculty of reasoning and understanding, then they should be able to look at all of these variances and differences in things and come to understand the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala further expounds upon this idea and concept in Surah Al-Hujurat, that is chapter 49 of the Quran, and verse 13. The famous verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha, wa ja'alnakum shu'uban wa qaba'ila lita'arafu, inna akramakum 'inda Allahi atqakum, inna Allaha alimun khabir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states, O mankind, speaking to everyone, humanity in its entirety, we have created you from male and female. And we have made you into tribes and nations, or nations and tribes. So creating humanity from male and female, and making humanity into nations and tribes, and naturally those different nations and sometimes various tribes, they will speak different languages. They will look different. There will be a diversity among the different tribes and languages. There's a diversity in gender, male and female. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says He's created all of these things, and no one is better than the other. Not male over female or female over male. Not one nation over another nation. Not one tribe over another tribe. The point of gender does not bring about any fadila, as we would say, any nobility, any superiority, nor does ethnicity bring about any superiority. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He points out one aspect of superiority. He says that the best among you, the most noble among you, inna akramakum 'inda Allah atqakum, is the one who is more conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is more connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what taqwa means. So that person is more connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That person who has taqwa will be among those individuals who look out at this diversity and see the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the thing that we should keep in mind throughout this discussion, and that is the peak of belief and faith, to understand these differences and to embrace them. So when it comes to the description of the Ahlul Bayt, we find in the Ahadith various descriptions of Ahlul Bayt. The book that I will be using just to give some of the descriptions that are mentioned is a book by the name of Mawsu'at Ahlul Bayt by Ali Ashur, the encyclopedia of the Ahlul Bayt, and simply because he compiled all of the characteristics, or at least a summary of those descriptions of Ahlul Bayt from the Hadith in his book. So beginning with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he writes that Imam Ali alayhi wasallam gave a description of the Prophet, stating that the Prophet was abyadul lawn mashriba hamra. So the Prophet was white and with a tint of redness, or fair-skinned with a tint of redness, whichever way you decide to translate it. But abyad literally means white, And humra means red. So the Prophet was this complexion, and the Prophet had very nice eyes, as Imam Ali is describing. His beard was thick, and also he had soft cheeks, according to the description of Imam Ali. And this is what we find in the hadith. Also in the Encyclopedia of Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afsadu sam, the description of Fatima Zahra, salamullah alayha, says that she was, as one woman was describing her, that she was like the moon. كَأَنَّهَا الْقَمَرُ لَيْلَةَ الْبَدْرِ. So she was like the moon in the night which you saw the full moon. Or she was like the shams, like the sun, a brilliant sun. So that's one of the descriptions that we have of Fatima Zahra. And another description, she's also described as Bayda mashribatul hamra, that she is white with a tint of redness. In other words, she looked like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with a fair skin or white skin with a reddish tint. In the ahadith, or at least in what Ali Ashur he brings in the summary of the descriptions of Ahlul Bayt, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he is described as كان رجلا آدم شديد الأدمة ثقيل العينين. So he is someone who was Adam. Adam means to be brown. And then he says شديد الأدمة, and dark brown. And he also had big eyes, or heavy eyes, according to this description as well, that he was stocky. He was someone that, again, his hair was balding. And it was, according to this description as well, that he had a white beard. And this is perhaps in his older age, as Imam Ali, when he was in Kufa. Because also another description of Ali that is given by someone is that an individual said he saw Imam Ali speaking from the pulpit, and he was a shaykhan marbu'an. So he was a sheikh, meaning he was elderly at the time, and he was stocky, marbu'an asmar, and he was brown. And of course, it says his hair was balding, and he also had white hair, meaning his beard was white, and the hair that was perhaps on the sides of his head was also white. Within this encyclopedia as well, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhim afdal are described as resembling Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. However, there was a slight distinction in how they looked, or similar to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It said that Imam Hassan, that he looked like Rasulullah from the chest upwards, and Imam Hussein alayhi salam, that is from the chest downward, he looked like Rasulullah, meaning that his stature was like Rasulullah. In another place as well, there's a description of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, where it stated that he looked like Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam as well, in most or all of his features. Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, he is described simply by his characteristics. There hasn't been, or I haven't seen any of the descriptions showing that what Imam Zayn al-Abidin he looked like, but rather he was always defined and described as a person who was pious, a person who was always praying, a person who displayed humbleness in his prayer. But any physical descriptions has not been obtained, or at least I haven't come across this. And we'll get into some of the lineage as well, so we can at least maybe have some idea of perhaps what the Imam looked like. Imam Baqir alayhi salam in Fusul al-Muhamma. This is a book that is a resource book for the encyclopedia of the Ahlul Bayt. And in this book, Fusul al-Muhamma, it says that Kana alayhi salam asmaru mu'tadilan. So Imam Baqir alayhi salatu wasalam is described as being fairly brown, moderately brown skin. According to some of the scholars, they had some sort of a doubt in that particular hadith, whether it was authentic or not. But nonetheless, inshallah, we will get into that a little bit later. Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he's also described in the Encyclopedia of Ahlul Bayt, and the source that has been used is a book called Al-Munaqib. And so it says that Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam كان ربع القامة أزهر الوجه هالك الشعر. So it says that Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he was also a man who was stocky. He was someone who, not skinny, not fat, but someone who was well built, stocky built. He is someone who was azharul wajh. So azharul wajh means a complexion which is also red and white. It is a azharul wajh is also used to denote someone who is fair-skinned, is someone to note someone who is also kind of fair or has white and red mixture of skin. Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi salatu wasalam, fortunately there was no description of him that I came across in the Encyclopedia of the Ahlul Bayt. Of course, the only description is that he's described by his piety and described by his knowledge, a person of great knowledge. And this is something that most of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam are also described by their piety, by their character, and by their knowledge. And this is perhaps the greatest description that we'll find. Some of the other descriptions as far as their stature, their color, these type of things, there are a few hadith here and there about those things. Imam Rida alayhi salatu wasalam, he is described by a person named Hassan ibn Mansur, and in the hadith he says that he entered upon Imam Rida alayhi salatu wasalam, and when he did, and he went into the house and he saw the Imam, he says, فَكَانَتْ كَأَنَّ فِي الْبَيْتِ عَشَرَةُ مَصَابِيحٍ. He says, what I saw was just a bright light. And so again here we see that the description of the Imam is based upon the light and the illumination of the Imam, not necessarily a physical color, stature, or what these things look like, but rather his illumination, the spirituality of the Imam was so radiant. He says it looked like there were 10 lights that was shining from the room. Imam Muhammad Taqi, Imam Jawad alayhi salatu wasalam, is described in the Encyclopedia of Ahlul Bayt, and the hadith that is brought is a hadith where the brothers of Imam Jawad alayhi salatu wasalam is engaged in a conversation. They're saying that ما كان فينا إمام قط حائل اللون أي Al-Jawad alayhi salam says that there was no Imam who was among us who was like the complexion of Imam Jawad. So it says that the ikhwatuhu, so the brothers of Imam Jawad were expressing this. And so in another narration it says that كان الجواد عليه السلام شديد الأدمة. And it's interesting, it says شديد الأدمة, which is the same description as used for Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. However, at least that complexion or that shidda or the darkness of the tone of Imam Jawad alayhi salatu wasalam was perhaps greater than that of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam. At least as if we put these two things together, the previous hadith where the brothers are saying that we haven't had an Imam among us who was the complexion of Imam Jawad. And according to some of the other narrations that we find about Imam Jawad alayhi salatu wasalam in Bahar Umar, it says he's Shadidul Sumra as well. So they use the word Sumra. Sumra also means brown. Adama, as we mentioned before, means brown. And Shadid means dark. It means intense. Imam Ali al-Naqi alayhi salatu, he is described as asmarul lawn. Again, someone who is brown-skinned, has brown complexion. Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salatu is described in the encyclopedia of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu as bayn as-sumra wal bayad. So he was between brown and white. So, and another description says rajulan asmar jamilul wajh jayyidul badan. So he was a brown-skinned person, and that brown skin was between brown and white, according to one hadith, another hadith. And he was someone who had a beautiful face, someone who had, again, a very solid or very nice stature and body. And again, in the Imam, he's described by his piety and his ibadah. Within the Encyclopedia of Ahlul Bayt by Ali Ashur, there was no description of Imam Mahdi alayhi salatu, although we find in Bihar al-Anwar there's some hadith that says that he looked most like his grandfather, and it would be his great-grandfather, because his grandfather says Jaddihi Imam al-Jawad. And so this is one of the descriptions of Imam Mahdi alayhi salatu in the Bihar al-Anwar. Now, when it comes to the historical reference of the Ahlul Bayt, these descriptions of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim are given without the detailed research into the lineage of Ahlul Bayt, simply based on the hadith and the rawayat. And one article written by Amina Inlos, she delves into some of the historical background of the Ahlul Bayt. The article is entitled Racial Othering in Shia Sacred History. So here she tries to outline at least some of the ethnicity of the Ahlul Bayt, and by doing so, one would at least have some sort of idea as to what the Ahlul Bayt may have looked like. And she basically focuses on the Imams, not on the Prophet or Fatima Zahra, but I guess they would perhaps fall into the same category as Imam Ali. So she starts with Imam Ali, that Imam Ali's mother, and she traces the ethnicity through the mothers, not through the fathers, because again, at least one Imam is the father of the next Imam, of course, except for Imam Ali whose father was Abu Talib, but nonetheless Abu Talib was Arab, and of course the mother of Imam Ali, Fatima bint Asad, she was Arab, and so therefore she says the Imam's ethnicity or ethnic composite is 100% Arab Hijazi. She goes to Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhim, where she also says that their ethnic composite is also 100% Arab. She reaches to Imam Sajjad alayhi whose mother is from Iran, and she has Iran or India. The more well-renowned narration is that she was from Iran, the daughter of one of the Shahs at the time. And so Imam Sajjad alayhi will be half Arab and half Iranian or Indian, according to the documentation of Amina Inlos. And so therefore, when we look at the hadith, and it does not give a physical description of Imam Sajjad, Ali ibn Hussein alayhi, one could perhaps understand that if Imam Hussein alayhi looked like Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and Rasulullah was white with a red tint, and then the mother of Imam Sajjad was also Iranian, who was perhaps also very fair, perhaps a similar complexion or even lighter, that Imam Sajjad alayhi would have that type of ethnic composite or that complexion. Imam Baqir alayhi, as she states, is that his mother was Arabian, And so Imam Baqir alayhi salatu wassalam, his ethnic composite would be 75% Arab, 25% Iranian or Indian, according to the documentation of Amina Inlos. Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, whose mother was also Arab, and so therefore his ethnic composite would be 87.5% Arab, 12.5% Iranian or Indian, according to this documentation. Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi salatu, whose mother was from North Africa, and she gives the possibility of Ethiopia or Somalia. Although within some of the hadith it's mentioned that she is from the Maghrib. And the Maghrib at that time was kind of pretty much a vague term. If one goes into the details of what exactly is the Maghrib. And so therefore this is why she perhaps came up with Ethiopia or Somalia, and not perhaps what many people think as Morocco in that area. But it also could be that area based on other historical documentation. So Imam Musa Kadhim alayhi salatu, his ethnic composite, according to but I mean in those she documents, is 50% African, 44% Arab, 6% Iranian or Indian. Imam Rida alayhi salatu, whose mother was also from North Africa, then his ethnic composite would be, according to Amini Inlos, 75% African, 21.9% Arab, 3.1% Iranian or Indian. Imam Jawad alayhi salatu, whose mother was from Egypt or Sudan. His mother was actually from the same tribe. She was Qibt. So she was from the same tribe as the Prophet's wife, Maria Qibtiyya, who was from Nuba. And Nuba is the northern part of Sudan or southern Egypt. So Imam Jawad alayhi salatu, according to this, his ethnic composite was 87.5% African, 10.9% Arab, 1.6% Iranian or Indian. Imam Hadi alayhi salatu, whose mother was from North Africa, he would be 93.8% African, 5.4% Arab, and 0.8% Iranian or Indian, according to Inlo's research. Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salatu, his mother was also Egyptian Sudanese, in other words, perhaps from Nuba, and so therefore, according to the ethnic composite that Amina Inlo, she writes in her article, that he would be 96.9% African, 2.7% Arab, 0.4% Iranian or Indian. Imam al-Mahdi, Ajal al-Faraj al-Sharif, his mother is from Anatolia, which would be Turkey or Rome, the Byzantine Empire, or, according to other accounts, that she was also Nubian from Egypt, southern Egypt, North Sudan, so from that region. So therefore, Amina Inlo, she gives two possibility of ethnic composites for Imam Mahdi Ajal Faraj al-Sharif. Either he was 98.4% African, 1.4% Arab, 0.2% Iranian or Indian. And this is if his mother is from Egypt, Sudan, meaning that area of Nuba, or North Africa. If she is from Anatolia, then, or Rome, or the Byzantine Empire, which was considered to be Rome, and the Byzantine Empire was quite vast, then he would be 50% Anatolian, 48.4% African, 1.4% Arab, and 2% Iranian or Indian. And that is according to the lineage. And that will give someone some idea about what the ethnic makeup of the Imams, or the the Imams are. Even the Ahlul Bayt alayhim in general, because again, Fatima Zahra and her father Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that they will be 100% Arab. Now, when we move into the rulings that our Maraj' they have given about this issue, again, we see what the ethnic makeup is, we see what the description of the hadith are, and then quite often, when one sees the pictures of the Ahlul Bayt or even of the Imams, they may not be exact according to these descriptions. So what is the ruling concerning these images of Ahlul Bayt? So according to Ayatollah Khamenei, Damallah Sharif, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him a long life. According to Ayatollah Khamenei, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala extend his life, he says that it is not a problem in itself from the religious point of view. So religiously painting the pictures or drawing the images of Ahlul Bayt and whether it matches the description or not that has come forth, or the lineage, he says it's not a problem in and of itself as long as it does not include any matters that are considered to be insulting or disrespectful according to custom, according to urf, that what the people perceive. So it cannot be something that is disrespectful to the Ahlul Bayt, that to draw them in a fashion or a form that seems to be disrespectful according to the customs of the people or the people who are looking at it. And it also should not conflict with the dignity of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim. So that is the ruling of Ayatollah Khamenei, Hafidhullah. The ruling of Ayatollah Safi Gopaigani, Hafidhullah, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala extend his life as well. He says, in general, not ascribing the images to the Ma'asum is more appropriate for the affairs of those individuals, the noble characters. In other words, if a person draws an image of a person that they later want to say that, oh, this is the image of Imam Ali, this is the painting of the Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So Ayatollah Safi Gopaigani says best not to even ascribe these images to the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Ayatollah Lankarani, Father Lankarani, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rest his soul, rahimahullah, late Ayatollah Father Lankarani, he says that there's no problem, although their attribution to the infallibles is not valid. In other words, if a person draws them, they draw it, they make the painting, they make the image, and if they attribute and ascribe it, well, this is Imam Ali, this is the character of Imam Ali, this is the character of the Prophet, this is the character of Fatima Zahra, of Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, he says that attribution is not valid. Ayatollah Bahjat, Qaddasallahu Sirruh Sharif, the Arif, as we know him, and Mujtahid Ayatollah Bahjat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon his soul, he says that it is not without problems. In other words, it is problematic to draw the images and to ascribe these images to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim. Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi, Hafidhullah, Makarim Shirazi, may Allah extend his life. His ruling is, these photos are not authentic, meaning that there's no authenticity in these photos, or to say that this is the Imam, or that is the Prophet, or this is Fatima Zahra. He says, this is not authentic. But because they are attributed to them, simply because a person draws them or they make the photos and then they begin to ascribe the images to the Ahlul Bayt, say, oh, well, this is the image of Ahlul Bayt. He says they should not be disrespected. At that point, a person shouldn't just, okay, we're going to rip this down, we're going to throw it away. Just simply because it's been attributed, then the photo should not be disrespected. Ayatollah Sistani, Hafidhullah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala extend his life, his ruling is that as long as it is not insulting, there's no problem. So as long as the image and what is drawn, what is painted is not insulting to the Ahlul Bayt, then there's no problem with it. Ayatollah Tabrizi, rahimahullah, the late Ayatollah Tabrizi, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon his soul, he states that if the intention is to remember and remind folks of the Ahlul Bayt, those noble characters, there's no problem. But if it is believed that these images are real or authentic images of the Ahlul Bayt, of the Imams, he says this is against Islamic belief. It's counter and it contradicts the aqidah of Islam. And it is incorrect to do so. So, in summary, we see that many of the Maraji, they say, well, it's not a problem. Some of them says, yes, it is a problem. It should not be attributed to them because the images, according to all of the Maraji, they're not authentic. They do not truly portray the images or what the Ahlul Bayt alayhim look like. And it becomes even more problematic as I told Tabrizi, he pointed out that if a person begins to attach some sort of belief to that yes, that these are the Ahlul Bayt, it becomes problematic because it is against the Islamic system of belief to authenticate such images of Ahlul Bayt alayhim. So inshallah, I hope that this discussion was fruitful and what we definitely should walk away with, as I mentioned in the introduction, is that understand that whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created in this world, in its diversity, whether it's in diversity in ethnicity, in color, in language, in gender, male and female, then these are all signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we are among those believers, and we are among those individuals who use our faculty, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he points out, then we will look upon this diversity, and we encourage everyone to look upon this diversity and understand the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not to exalt one nation over another nation, one ethnicity over another ethnicity, one color over another color, one language over another language, but rather we put forth those individuals who are more conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who are more connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inna akramakum inda Allah atqakum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.